Hello, my name is Dr. Sonya Ramsey. I'm a professor of history and women and gender studies at UNC Charlotte in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm here today to talk about my new book, Bertha Maxwell Roddy, A Modern Day Race Woman and the Power of Black Leadership. Bertha Maxwell Roddy was born in Seneca, South Carolina in 1930. She grew up in Seneca and also migrated to Charlotte, eventually attending Johnson C. Smith University there and pledging the Gamma Lambda chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. Why am I writing about Dr. Maxwell Roddy? Well, why is she so important to understand in history and African American women's history? Dr. Bertha Maxwell Roddy represents the hundreds of women who worked behind the scenes after the marches, after the civil rights, what we call the modern day civil rights movement that really continues on. But after the marches died down, after the big public speeches of the Black Panthers died down, and the people were left to make desegregation work, to make civil rights work. The civil rights laws had been passed, the feminist movement had achieved great gains, but yet what do we do with it? How do we keep the doors open and that people had knocked down? Dr. Bertha Maxwell Roddy was one of those people who kept the doors open, and this story tells how she did it. So after growing up in Seneca, South Carolina, and very poor, and getting a college education at Johnson, she began a career as a teacher, as an educator. And she was an educator in segregated schools in Charlotte. So in these schools, one school was in an African-American neighborhood called the First Ward of Charlotte. And she saw that they did not have kindergarten for African-American children, and that was free. And her children in her neighborhood needed to have free kindergarten. So she was able to cajole and to gather teachers to work for free during the summer and formed the Charlotte Teachers Institute in 1966. The Charlotte Teachers Institute educated children for free, and they got national attention, and eventually led predecessor to what we call the Head Start movement. It was 64 rather. So you can see her early steps to be a leader in those early years. Dr. Maxwell Roddy is a person that has what I call a pragmatic likability. She's a very likable person. She's also a charismatic leader in a way. So when we think of charismatic leaders, we often think of people like Dr. Martin Luther King, which of course is a very charismatic leader, but also other people had a charismatic leaders. And what I mean by that is she was able to persuade people to do things that were somewhat against their best interests, not in their job description, extra work, because they believed in her goal, they believed in her plans to serve. Dr. Maxwell Roddy then progresses on through the desegregation process to become one of the first Black people to get a master's in educational administration at UNC Greensboro. Then she becomes a principal of all Black Morgan Education School, right in the busing crisis of Charlotte for those days. When she found that her students were going to be bused, she went to the two schools that were going to bust, and one principal was really reluctant and really acting a little strange. And she called the superintendent and said, "You're going to handle this because my children are going to be safe in that school." She also fought to protect Black teachers, which were being fired in North Carolina and all across the South due to desegregation, unfortunately. So after Morgan, her school closed, they appointed her principal to become one of the first Black women principals of all-white Albemarle Elementary School in Charlotte. It was a new school. There were like 300 or 400 white students and 4 or 5 Black students. And she fought there to protect the African-American students, but also she fell in love with all the students. She innovated teaching methods, but she had such a hard time dealing with some of the parents who were not comfortable with her as a Black person, or comfortable with her as a woman, or comfortable with her as both. One story she also recounts is that one parent was upset about the way his child was punished, and wanted the teacher fired, and he said, "I'm going to take you to the school board." But she invited the entire school board there. She said, "Well, do it right now, and I'll have you at this meeting." And he backed down a bit. She was able to form networks and allies with people from all walks of life, from school board superintendents, Bank of America CEOs, to people who were just served some prison time. It didn't matter with Dr. Maxwell Roddy. Anybody could help, anybody could serve. Also, after she decides to leave Albemarle, because she said it was like putting diapers on gnats. I love that phrase. She proceeds on to be the founder of UNC Charlotte's African American Studies program, which at the time was Black Studies. Now, she didn't know anything. She thought she was going to have a vacation from all the turmoil and chaos and go to this nice UNC Charlotte, this new school. It started in 1965. It actually grew from the 40s as a school for returning over 2 vets. and founded by Dr. Bonnie Cone to eventually become this new university, UNC Charlotte. So she thought she was chilling a little bit, but found out just happened to be the rise of the Black Studies movement, just emerged. So there she was, the second full-time Black faculty. And after they looked for several male directors of the Black Studies program, they set their sights and turned to her. There she was. So she said, I didn't know anything Black Studies. And she wanted to get the buy-in from the students who were protesting, of course. And she said they thought she was a handkerchief head N-word, I won't say that word, but she said, I have the skills to run this program, and she did. She crafted an innovative program that not only had traditional academics, but also encounter groups, because she knew that African-American students might be isolated in this new school with so few Black students, and she wanted to create a home away from home from them. She also worked with other Black Studies practitioners to found a National Council for Black Studies, because she knew they needed accreditation, and then, who was going to accredit them at that early 70s, in 1974. So she's hanging around the great icons of Black Studies, Malenga Karenga, Leonard Jeffries, James Turner, and they're all discussing different philosophical theories, Pan-Africanism, cultural nationalism. And she tells them, be quiet, fellas, we got to get to work. So they listen to Sister Bertha. And actually, we'll call her the Queen Mother, though she doesn't like that phrase that much. Eventually, she also looks into her own city of Charlotte and helps Dr. Mary Harper start the Afro-American Cultural Service Center. And because they were very concerned, because a lot of the urban neighborhoods in Charlotte being bulldozed due to urban renewal, and also school desegregation were closing many Black schools. And she thought, where were the children going to have any cultural landmarks? So this Afro-American Cultural Center talked to the Ragtag Arts Organization, and eventually morphed into the fabulous, beautiful Harvard B. Gantt Center for the Arts, one of the most prestigious African-American regional art museums in the South, or the country rather. So that's her story of education. She also has a whole nother life I haven't talked about. Since her initiation in 1951 in Gamma Lambda chapter of a Delta Sigma Theta, Dr. Roddy has progressed along overnight, winning more and more offices in the sorority. Now, African-American sororities, as we know, continue after graduation in their public service organizations. So her story, her leadership journey, is a fascinating story of political intrigue and amidst sisterhood. So not like other elections, when you win, you fight to win, but you also embrace your sister afterwards. And she also implemented a program when she became president. And just think, African-American sororities, the one time when a Black woman can encourage 300,000 women to do what she says with her agenda. And her agenda was to partner with Habitat for Humanity to build homes for African-Americans, especially single Black women, that she knew they needed homes and they didn't want to fall prey to the mortgage prices or mortgage problems of the time. So Dr. Maxwell Roddy and her journey to the sorority is exciting, if you're interested in Delta Sigma Theta or other sororities. It's the first book to really tell that kind of tale. And I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta, but I was inactive, and I learned so much more about the sorority. I learned about the joy of sorority. I learned so much more about how dedicated these women work to engage their communities and help better their cities and the people in their lives. And I think this is a great book for you to read. I would encourage anybody who's interested in education and desegregation, African-American women's history, and the urban history of Charlotte, and of course the Delta Sigma Theta sorority is a must buy, I would think, to get this book. And please share it and bring it to guests. Thank you.